Finally, vengeance was Angron's, the demon primarch of the World Eaters. 10,000 years ago, at the Battle of the Eternity Gate, Sanguinius had ripped the butcher's nails out of his brother's head and sent the demon primarch of Khorne screaming back to the war. But now Sanguinius the Great Angel was long gone, and Angron, the Red Angel, stood atop the tower of the Warpforge Palace and over his brother's mightiest son. Commander Dante, the chapter master of the Blood Angels, lay defenseless. The Blood Angels had come to the aid of the Dark Angels as they stood battered against the Chaos forces on the corrupted ruins of Caliban. Yet, the sons of Sanguinius had done little to actually slow down Angron. The corporeal form of the Lord of the Red Sands healed the minor damage that they had done to him. Azrael, Supreme Grand Master of the Dark Angels, could see Angron and Dante from afar, and he grieved that this mighty champion of the Imperium would perish to save his chapter. The normally deadly and accurate shots of the Dark Angels had in truth done little but temporarily distract the demon primarch of Khorne. Corvus Corax of the Raven Guard had once thought that only Sanguinius and Horus would have been able to best Angron in combat, but they were both long dead, the Emperor's brightest and darkest sons. All hope seemed lost. Out of nowhere a shadowy mist rose and coiled around Dante and the Blood God's Red Angel. For the Emperor still has an angel of his own, and this one is a Dark Angel. Angron, Sanguinius, Horus, Corvus, GUILLIMAN, all sons of the Emperor, all Primarchs, all blessed with his gifts. But one Primarch was created first, and he is said to be the template from which all of his brothers were made, and only he was regarded by the Emperor of Mankind as his firstborn son. Lion L. Johnson stepped from the mist, a demigod knight with a glowing blade and glinting shield, as in the tales of old Earth. He had returned to the remains of his homeworld in his son's darkest hour. He had fought with the Blood Angels many times and served with their father during the heresy. Dante would not die today. The monster slayer of Caliban was here, before a beast that needed slaying. Azrael had never seen his Genefather in the flesh, but when he saw the lion, he fell to one knee. Deep within his blood he knew this man, so too it seemed did the Deathwing, for upon seeing him they bellowed new oaths. Some of these words came from a deep place they knew where not, but in an instant they were certain that they would fight and die for this man. The bone-coloured Terminator armour was covered in blood and demonic ichor from the battle, but now it shone true, bright and terrifying as the death. Lion L. Johnson stood, and he was not alone. He stood with the black-armoured Risen, warriors out of time, forgiven and with new oaths to fight for the Lion and the Emperor. Angron beheld his brother, but in his broken mind he saw just another skull for the throne. He howled and struck at the lion. Despite his age, the supernatural instincts of the Lord of the First were keen, for the Emperor made his sons functionally immortal. He deflected and parried the blows. L. Johnson was the master of mankind's double-edged sword. Seizing the opportunity, the Risen struck, but Angron swept them aside with Samniarius and Spinegrinder. The lion bid his sons retreat, for this fight was his. He then feigned retreat also, to allow Commander Dante to be extracted. Azrael watched in awe, desperate to aid his lord. But for a second the lion's eyes locked with his sons. This hit Azrael like a physical blow. There were no words that needed to be uttered. Azrael knew his orders. The Supreme Grand Master turned back to the World Eaters. The arrival of the Firstborn incensed the Chaos forces, somewhere in the outer darkness, for being spied on a new threat to their power. The Lion's ploy to draw Angron away succeeded. He vanished from the tower, and Angron roared in pursuit. But Dante and his remaining guards still lay prone, angels spent trying to save their darker cousins. Azrael could not let this stand, and a blood debt was owed, and bellowed the words that so many had come to fear across the galaxy, but now they carried new meaning. For the Lion! The Terminators of the Deathwing joined him, and soon the Warpforge Palace echoed with the sounds of their cry, for the Lion and the Emperor. With Commander Dante secure and the remaining Blood Angels and Dark Angels heading towards extraction points, the Lion was free to focus on his fallen brother. On New Seria, under the torture of the Butcher's nails, Angron gained the savagery that had developed through the ages. But the Lion's homeworld had developed him too, for he grew up combating wild and warp-tainted beasts. His brother was just one in a long line of monsters. Angron may have disgusted the Lord of Caliban, but that did not mean L. Johnson would underestimate this threat. After his dark apotheosis, Angron's blows were enough to crumble Imperial Knights, but the Lion wielded the Emperor's shield, and it took the blows, the shockwaves driving Angron back. Grateful for the shield and the blessings of his father, for an instant the Lion's mind drifted back to a conversation he'd had with the Emperor. Rabute raises an Imperium in miniature that celebrates his name and yours. I have left as many worlds behind me as any two of my brothers, but I fear that darkness and ash will be the legacy I leave to your Imperium. The Emperor considered long, as he often did before giving an answer. In the Lime of Aegypta, there was an empress named Hatshepsut. By all accounts of her that survive, she was an equitable and proficient ruler by the standards of her time. She rebuilt her land in the wake of war and occupation, erecting great monuments and bringing prosperity to her people. She reassembled the Aegypta's navy, using it to re-establish their old empire, and launched military campaigns against the nations who had once been their oppressors. A legacy whose parallels are not hard to see. And yet, those who came after her did all within their power to ensure that she would have no legacy. Her name was chiseled from every monument, her every deed and triumph stricken from public record. Even her body was removed from its royal tomb. Why, if her reign was so equitable? Because those who succeeded her desired it. Because sometimes what comes before is too troublesome to be paved over in rockcrete, to amend with a monument to compliance or a golden aquila on an imperial flag. Sometimes it is enough only that it be destroyed, that no trace of it but darkness and ash be left to endure. And yet, history still remembers this empress. The Emperor Thutmose III did not have his Dark Angels. And here he was, 10 millennia later, Lion L. Johnson, the Emperor's exterminator. But he was so much more now. He was the protector of Imperium Nihilus. The Emperor never gave the Lion the pomp and laurels demanded by his brothers, because he knew, as did the Lion, that loyalty is its own reward. The two demigods fought their way across the mechanical plateau, where unholy machineries pounded and jets of white-hot flame erupted from hidden apertures. Angron's blows had felled many of the Lion's Genesons, but now L. Johnson's new blade fealty parried them, or they hammered into the Emperor's shield, and the Red Angel would be forced back again. The Lion sought to put space between them to give him time to enact his plan. He utilized the terrain, but Angron would just barrel through it, brimming with rage. L. Johnson headed down a brass staircase, and he saw Angron had taken to the skies, utilizing the hellish gifts from his patron god. Angron grasped the stairway superstructure and then wrenched the entire edifice away from the side of the mechanical plateau. The Lion leapt clear as the structure collapsed under its own weight. When he landed, there was an eerie sense of familiarity. He recognized the architectural style of his homeworld. Angron swooped down and engaged his brother again. The lion could not break concentration now, even for a second, as the demonic strikes could easily split him into two, or just leave him as a bloody paste on the ground. Somewhere in his addled mind, the gladiator Primarch of Khorne still had his martial competency. He was enhanced by dark powers and was eternally driven by the butcher's nails, which dealt white-hot agony to spur him on. Eventually, the 12th found his opening, and with one kick, he cracked the first's armor and sent L. Johnson through a statue and onto a rooftop behind. The lion then had to roll away to avoid the chain axe spine grinder, and it took him off the roof, down onto a metal platform 30 feet below. The lion took in these new surroundings almost instantly, which was fortunate as Angron descended. The lion was prepared, and Angron crashed upon the Emperor's shield and was held back by an explosion of golden energy. Quickly on his feet again, Angron grabbed a nearby World Eater's Predator tank and launched it at the Primarch of the Dark Angels. The lion dodged it easily enough, however the second tank Angron threw was a gorgeous Dark Angel's green impulsor, which the lion was not quick enough to avoid. It smashed into the Lord of Caliban and took him through the stonework behind. The lion righted himself and climbed atop the impromptu missile. As Angron dove at his brother again, the lion dove aside and managed to hammer his father's shield into the back of the Red Angel's head for good measure. Angron was sent into a ruin and was buried beneath its collapse. The lion knew his brother was down but not out. Sure enough, the demon Primarch burst forth from the rubble heap. The hate in his eyes was unmatched by anything that L. Johnson had seen, and he attacked in a blur. The lion barely got the shield up to save himself. This time the energy sent the lion hurtling back also, and he fell again down to a lower platform. Angron descended like a meteor. The lion was hurt, but he couldn't help but smile, as he was now in the perfect place to enact his strategy. You see, during the heresy, the lion had led the hunt for his brother, Conrad Kurz the Night Haunter. The lion had learned from one of the best the deadliness of striking from the shadows. He disappeared into the smog, and Angron's frustrations grew, and he was appalled at this trickery. He had used his advantage of flight against the lion. Now it was his brother's turn to demonstrate his gifts. The smog eclipsed Angron's demonic senses, and he was forced to swipe wildly at where he thought the lion would be. As his weapons passed through nothing but smog, the lion pounced. He drove the Emperor's shield into his brother's side. Angron was thrust into the air, but as he turned, the lion vanished once again. The Lord of Caliban felt as if he was back on his homeworld of old, hunting monsters in the misty forests. Again and again he struck, and Angron's blows found only empty space or occasionally the Emperor's shield. As Angron's fury reached new levels, the lion waited for his chance. But finally, Angron caught sight of his brother. A piston discharging steam had blasted aside the veil of smog. Angron beat his wings and hurled himself at the lion. He swung his weapons to decapitate his brother. Yet, this time the lion made no effort to defend. With blistering speed, he instead dropped to one knee, braced his blade with his whole body, and let Angron slam straight into its raised point. The demon Primarch's own impetus drove the glowing blade up through his torso until it erupted from the nape of his neck in a mountain of gore. The force took the lion over with it, and when they landed, the blade fealty had pierced Angron's wing and pinned him. Angron desperately thrashed and howled, but above him was the Monster Slayer, the true lord of this wretched place. The battle had taken its toll on the aged Primarch. Now he would finish it. He gripped the Emperor's shield with both hands and raised it above Angron's head. So many of his sons had died today fighting the Red Angel. The lion knew his purpose now. He had failed his father. He may have also failed his brothers. He will not fail his sons. The shield came down. Angron was banished. The lion headed to the extraction site, tuning into the Dark Angel's command channel for the first time in 10,000 years. When he had looked at the lion, Azrael had made a silent oath that he would get Commander Dante to safety. He had done his duty, the first of many oaths he and the rest of the Sons of the Lion would make for their lord, for there is much work to do. So there we have it, Lion L. Johnson has returned. If you enjoyed this video, please do consider supporting the channel through the join button on the page below. Otherwise, a like and subscribe does go a long way. Your support is greatly appreciated and helps me bring more of this kind of content. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.